All right, hooking your students at the start of the lesson is so important to your success. And today, I'm going to share a fun take on 2 truths and a lie that you can use before any short story, novel, or poetry unit. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. But before we do, make sure that you hit subscribe where you're watching this video. All right, part 1 of this is we love to start a unit with this game to introduce our students to the author. So it's great if you're doing like an author study or teaching several works written by the same author. And if you're teaching The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, this activity is a must because of the focus in the story about the unreliable narrator. So I'm going to use this as an example to show you how this activity works in practice. So students will need to consider the reliability of information that they hear, and then they need to determine which of the 3 statements shared is a truth, which is a lie. So 2 are truths and 1 is a lie. So first you want to choose the author that you want for this activity, and then you can use ChatGPT to type in the following. Create 4 rounds of 2 truths and a lie for the author blank. And this serves as a great starting off point for you, and you can always adjust the statements to make them more interesting if you want to. Then next, you'll decide whether you want students to do this activity individually, in pairs, or in groups. And if you choose groups, like 3 to 4 is a good number of students for each group for this activity. You may also want to consider having a small prize on hand if you're able to, like stickers or candy. I don't know, it depends on the rules of your school. And that you can give to students or groups that have all of the correct responses. So again, I'm going to give you an example that you could use to play 2 truths and a lie using statements for a unit on Edgar Allan Poe. So if you want to play with your students before your next Poe unit, you may want to pause and jot down the statements and answers that I'm going to give you. Okay, so I'm going to read you a few statements about Edgar Allan Poe's life. 2 of them are statements that will be true, and 1 of them is going to be a lie. Okay, so number 1. My name was originally Edgar Allan Poe with no middle name. Both my mother and wife passed away from tuberculosis, or my parents were published writers. So in this case, my parents were published writers is the lie. All right, next one. First one, when my wife and I were married, she was 13 and I was 27. Next one, my wife was also my first cousin. And the last one, people disapproved of my marriage because they believed I was marrying my wife for her money. Again, the lie is that last one. If you don't know anything about Poe's life, it's fascinating. All right, so for the next one, 3 more statements. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland. I wrote love poems, or I was one of the first writers of detective stories. The first one is false. Poe was actually born up in Massachusetts. All right, and then our last set of statements. I had an enemy, I was a school teacher, or I inspired the name of an American football team. And number 2 is the lie. It is that he was a teacher, he was not. All right, so hopefully those are some fun ones that you can use with Poe. So again, take screenshots or write them down so that you can use those with your students. All right, so using that as an example, after you play the game with your students, you can go over the answers, you can declare the winners, and you can even take it a step further to have a class discussion. So I'm gonna give you some great questions to ask if you do choose to lead a class discussion on this. So number 1 can be, what strategy did you use in choosing which statements were lies? Were these strategies effective? Explain. Or, what has this activity taught you about the trustworthiness of information? If you had been told that all of the statements in this activity were true, would you have believed them, right? Like why or why not? Great discussion questions. Last one is, in your experience, do people tend to believe everything that they read? And what makes you say this? So it creates this great, rich conversation. All right, so there you have it, a fabulous Edgar Allan Poe 2 truths and a lie game as an example, and an activity that you can use with any author. And it would be so much fun if you had your students actually create their own version of 2 truths and a lie for an author study, or they can tie in song lyrics and see if they can trick their classmates as to who said the quote. And if you do use this with your students, let us know how it goes. So you can find more activities and lessons like this one inside of our EB Teachers Club, which is our monthly membership for middle school ELA teachers. If you're interested in learning more about that, I've included a link where you're watching this video.